You are welcome to Explains 102, where financial tips are made simple. There was a young man named Daniel. From childhood, Daniel was known as one of the smartest in his environment. In school, he understood lessons faster than others, asked deeper questions, and always seemed to find the easiest way to solve difficult problems. Teachers often used him as an example. His classmates expected that intelligence would naturally lead him to success in life. After university, Daniel graduated with excellent results. As expected, he quickly secured a good job in a reputable company. His salary was higher than many of his peers, and on the surface, everything looked promising. People around him believed he was on the right path. He also believed in himself. At the beginning, life felt stable. He could afford his basic needs without stress. He was respected at work, and his future seemed secure. But as time passed, something started to change quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Despite his intelligence and relatively good income, Daniel began to notice a strange pattern in his financial life. At the end of every month, he had very little left. Sometimes nothing at all. There was always a reason. Rent, transportation, food, helping family, small personal expenses, unexpected purchases. Each one seemed reasonable on its own, but together, they created a pattern he could not ignore. He was earning well, yet he was not building anything lasting. At first, Daniel did not worry. He assumed it was normal. He believed that once his income increased further, everything would naturally fall into place. He told himself that financial stability would come with time and higher earnings. But as the months turned into years, something uncomfortable became clearer. His income was gradually increasing, but his savings were not. His lifestyle was also adjusting upward with his income. A better phone here, a more comfortable apartment there, improved convenience, small upgrades that felt justified because he was doing well. Still, nothing meaningful was being built in terms of wealth. Around the same time, Daniel began to observe people he once considered less academically gifted. Some of them had started small businesses. Others were quietly investing small amounts of money or building simple income streams. Their lives did not look as polished as his, but something was different. Slowly, they were beginning to show signs of financial progress. This confused Daniel deeply. He could not understand how people he once outperformed academically were beginning to move ahead financially. In his mind, intelligence should have been the deciding factor. The more intelligent person should naturally make better decisions, earn more, and build wealth faster. But reality was not reflecting that expectation. One evening, after receiving his salary, Daniel sat alone and reviewed his financial situation carefully. For the first time, he did not just look at how much he earned. He looked at what remained after everything was spent. The result made him uncomfortable. There was no clear direction in his finances. No structure. No system. Just income coming in and going out in different directions. That moment marked the beginning of a silent internal struggle. Daniel began to question everything he thought he understood about money. If he was smart, why was he not financially stable? If he earned more than some of his peers, why did they seem to be progressing faster than him? If he understood concepts quickly, why did he struggle to build something lasting with money? These questions did not have immediate answers, but they stayed with him. And slowly, they began to reveal something important, not about intelligence alone, but about the hidden gap between understanding and behavior, between knowledge and action, between earning money and actually building wealth. Daniel did not know it yet, but he was standing at the beginning of a realization that would completely change how he viewed success, money, and intelligence itself. Daniel's confusion did not disappear after that moment. In fact, it grew stronger. The more he observed, the more questions he had. He began to realize that intelligence alone was not translating into financial progress. So he started paying closer attention not only to others, but also to himself. At first, he thought the problem must be external. Maybe the economy was difficult. Maybe expenses were too high. Maybe opportunities were limited. But as he reflected more honestly, he began to see patterns that were too consistent to ignore. The issue was not just outside him. It was also inside his daily decisions. One of the first things Daniel discovered about himself was how much he relied on thinking instead of action. He was trained to analyze, to evaluate, and to understand deeply before making decisions. In school and academics, this approach worked well. Careful thinking often led to correct answers. But life outside academics was different. In real life, opportunities do not wait for perfect understanding. They require response, not just analysis. Daniel noticed that while he was still trying to fully understand how to start investing properly, others who knew less were already taking small steps. They were not perfect, but they were active. They were learning through action, not waiting for complete clarity. For the first time, Daniel began to see that overthinking was not just a habit. It was a delay mechanism. It created the feeling of progress without actual movement. He realized that intelligence sometimes creates a false sense of preparation, where a person feels they are almost ready for too long without ever starting. As this realization settled, another pattern became visible. Daniel started to examine how he spent his money. He had always believed that because he earned well, he was managing his finances properly. But when he broke down his expenses honestly, he saw something uncomfortable. His spending decisions were not purely logical. They were emotional and habitual. He upgraded things not because they were necessary, but because they felt like rewards. A better phone, a more comfortable lifestyle, small improvements that seemed harmless individually, but significant collectively. Each decision made sense in the moment. But together, they formed a pattern that prevented any meaningful accumulation of wealth. He also noticed something deeper. Every time his income increased, his lifestyle adjusted almost immediately. Without planning, without intention, his expenses expanded alongside his earnings. It was not a conscious decision. It was automatic, as if his financial life was designed to reset itself every time progress appeared. This is where Daniel began to understand one of the hidden reasons why smart people often stay broke. It was not because they do not understand money. It is because their intelligence often makes them justify their spending more effectively. They can explain their choices, rationalize their behavior, and convince themselves that everything is reasonable. But reason does not always equal financial progress. At the same time, Daniel began to observe a different group of people. Some of them were not as academically strong as he was. They did not always speak with technical understanding or complex explanations. Yet their financial behavior was different. They were slower in decision-making, but more consistent in execution. They were not constantly analyzing. They were acting, adjusting, and continuing. Some started small businesses with limited knowledge, but they learned through experience. Others invested small amounts regularly without trying to time everything perfectly. Their approach was simple, sometimes even imperfect, but it was consistent. Daniel started to see a pattern forming clearly. Intelligence often seeks certainty before action, but wealth tends to grow through repeated action over time, even when certainty is not complete. This created a silent gap between knowledge and results. Many smart people understand what should be done, but struggle with actually doing it consistently. They know about saving, investing, and financial discipline, but knowledge alone does not automatically change behavior. Another realization came when Daniel reflected on his mindset around income. He noticed that he often felt secure because of his salary. It gave him confidence that he was fine. But that confidence created a hidden trap. Because he felt secure, he did not feel urgency to build anything outside his job. This is how high intelligence can sometimes create false security. A stable income can make a person feel financially safe even when they are not actually building wealth. It reduces urgency, and without urgency, systems are rarely built. Daniel also realized something even deeper about smart people in general. They often struggle with starting small. Because they understand the bigger picture, they sometimes underestimate small beginnings. They want optimal strategies, perfect timing, and efficient systems from the start. But wealth building rarely begins with perfection. It begins with repetition. Small actions repeated consistently are often more powerful than large plans that never begin. As Daniel continued observing both himself and others, the pattern became undeniable. The difference was not intelligence. It was behavior under uncertainty. Some people needed full clarity before starting. Others started with partial understanding and improved along the way. One path led to delay. The other led to accumulation. Over time, Daniel began to accept a difficult truth. Intelligence can help a person understand money, but it does not guarantee financial discipline. It can improve reasoning, but it does not automatically control habits. It can explain problems, but it does not always solve them. And this gap between understanding and action was quietly shaping his financial reality. He was beginning to realize that staying broke was not always about lack of knowledge. Sometimes it was about the inability to translate knowledge into consistent behavior over time. Lessons. Daniel's realization did not end with observation alone. Over time, what he saw in his life and in the lives of others began to form deeper lessons that changed the way he understood success, money, and intelligence itself. The first lesson he learned was that understanding something is not the same as doing it. For a long time, Daniel believed that knowing more about money would naturally lead to better financial outcomes. He had read articles, listened to advice, and even discussed financial ideas with friends. But knowledge alone had not changed his situation. It was only when he started to reflect on his actions that he realized the gap. Knowing what to do is only the beginning. The real difference comes from doing it repeatedly over time. The second lesson was that action is more powerful than analysis when it comes to building wealth. Daniel had spent years analyzing decisions before taking any step. He thought careful thinking would protect him from mistakes. But what he failed to see was that delay itself was also a decision. While he was trying to be certain, time was moving and opportunities were being lost. He began to understand that imperfect action taken early often leads to better results than perfect plans that never begin. Another important lesson Daniel learned was that financial progress is shaped more by habits than by intelligence. He had always believed intelligence was his advantage, but he now saw that habits were stronger. His spending habits, saving habits, and lifestyle habits were quietly shaping his financial reality every day. Small decisions repeated consistently had more impact than occasional big decisions. Wealth, he realized, is not built in moments of inspiration, but in patterns of behavior. Daniel also came to understand the danger of lifestyle adjustment. Every increase in income had previously led to an almost automatic increase in spending. He had never questioned it because it felt natural, but now he saw it differently. When income rises, but expenses rise at the same speed, progress becomes invisible. He learned that financial growth is not just about earning more, but about controlling how much of that increase is retained and directed toward meaningful use. A deeper lesson emerged around the idea of urgency. Daniel noticed that having a stable income made him feel comfortable, and comfort reduced his sense of urgency. Because he was not struggling, he assumed he was fine. But comfort without structure can delay growth. He realized that financial progress often begins when a person feels the need to build something beyond their current security. Without urgency, important decisions are easily postponed. He also learned that intelligence can sometimes create invisible traps. Smart people are often very good at explaining their choices. They can justify spending, delay decisions with logic, and rationalize inactivity in ways that sound reasonable. But explanation is not the same as progress. Daniel saw that being able to defend a decision does not mean it is moving you forward. Sometimes intelligence protects comfort more than it builds discipline. Another lesson that became clear to him was the importance of starting small. He used to believe that meaningful progress required large amounts of money or perfect conditions. But through observation, he saw that small beginnings, when repeated consistently, often lead to the biggest results. Those who started with little but remained consistent eventually moved ahead of those who waited for ideal conditions. This shifted his entire perspective on action. Size was not the issue. Consistency was. Daniel also learned that time is a silent force in financial growth. He began to see that time does not reward intention. It rewards action. Every year spent waiting is a year that cannot be recovered. Even small investments of time and money, when given enough duration, can grow into something significant. But delay removes the most powerful ingredient in growth, continuity. Once broken, the opportunity of compounding becomes harder to rebuild. Perhaps the most important lesson Daniel learned was that financial success is not reserved for the smartest people, but for the most consistent ones. Intelligence may provide understanding, but consistency builds results. Many people understand what to do with their money, but only a few persist long enough for that knowledge to produce visible outcomes. He realized that wealth is less about brilliance and more about discipline repeated over time. As these lessons came together, Daniel began to see his financial journey differently. He was no longer focused on being the smartest person in the room. Instead, he focused on becoming the most consistent in his actions. Slowly, his decisions began to change. He started small, acted earlier, and became more intentional about how he handled money. And that shift, though simple, began to change everything. So as you reflect on Daniel's story, remember this. Financial growth is not only about what you know, but what you do consistently over time. Intelligence can guide you, but action builds your future. If you found this insightful and you want more simple